Dear students and distinguished guests, congratulations and thank you for the invitation and the great honor of giving this commencement speech. If I were you, sitting where you're sitting now, looking up at me, I would probably be thinking two things right now. Who the hell is this guy? And I hope this speech isn't long and boring. Well, my name is Thomas, and I'm an engineer and the CEO of Schmidt Innovation. And then I'm number one. I am the number one. And now some of you are probably thinking, what a smart ass. But I am number one. I was the first student to ever graduate from energy engineering here in Aalborg University back in 2012. Can you imagine the pressure? If I'd been totally hopeless, maybe they would have said, as you see, didn't work out, and dumped the whole thing. Luckily, that didn't happen, and I graduated 7 years ago. And I was sitting where you're sitting right now, feeling proud, but also a little bit nervous. What are my goals now? Where do I want to go? All the endless projects, exams, and MATLAB scripts. Does any company in the world even care about all that? How will it all turn out? Well, in May last year, this thing happened. I was on the coast of China, somewhere between the mainland and Taiwan. I was taking a boat out to this giant offshore wind turbine, and I went in and took the elevator up 100 meters. Up there, my good friend Niels Pedersen greeted me and said, "Come, follow me up." I followed him up, walked all the way up the stairs, all the way to the ceiling, where a small lid opened up. I went up, I looked around, and I saw the most amazing view of my entire life. I climbed all the way up, and I stood on top of the turbine, looking out at China with my good friend, helping the world produce clean energy in a company I founded myself 2 years earlier. Now that was an amazing feeling. And I wish I could tell you all that it was a straight line from where you're sitting there up till that point in that tower. But it wasn't anything but straight. But first things first, student life. I loved being a student here. The student life is very planned and well-organized life, at least when you're in school. The nice people here at Aalborg University, they made sure you got all the knowledge you need to become good engineers. But they also made sure of something else. You had some basic needs that were covered for you. You have a sense of progression each year, first semester, second semester, third semester. You get feedback on the work you do. The professor grades your report. You're part of something bigger. You're part of a group. You're part of a university. And most important of all, you have a rich social life around you. You have a lot of other students all thinking about the three same things as you are. Engineering, the opposite sex, and beer. Not always in that order, of course. Speaking of beer, my good friend Ken and I went out during studies. And he said, "Do you want to grab a beer?" I said, "Sure, but only one." And probably you guys use the same sentence, and it's never just one, it's always at least 5. And Kenneth and I, we ended up in a company of some very drunk Russians. And they showed me a bottle of Jack Daniels and another bottle of Coca-Cola, Russian Coca-Cola, I think. They mixed the two together, and they put it up. We drank it, and suddenly I couldn't speak. My mouth moved, but I couldn't speak. I want to say something clever like, have you thought about how the entropy of the universe is always expanding? But I just said, blah, 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 blah. So to make a long story short, I woke up at the hospital to the sound of some nurse giving me a lecture that I have to control my drinking. So at that point, I promised myself that I would never mix Jack Daniels and Russian Coke again. So that went totally wrong. But today, Kenneth is one of the best industrial technicians I know. He's helping me out whenever I need to get some mechanical part produced in my company. And in 2 weeks, I'm actually going to Russia again. I brought a Jack Daniels, but no Coke this time. Cola this time. I guess the lesson is, try to maintain your friends when you leave here. Soon, your lives are going to be very different, but you're still going to need your friends. My first job. I was very lucky to get a job right after graduation. I was an engineer now, and my work would finally contribute to something greater than just myself. Going from SU to a salary of 35,000 a month felt great, and it was the largest increase in income that I've tried. The first day on the job, I got myself a nice office, some flowers, and a laptop from the Second World War that would take about the first cup of coffee to get started every day. My job was to find components for a Russian cement factory. Apparently the Russians are gonna haunt me forever. In this job, I wasn't going to develop anything, but it was a job. And it was okay in the beginning, but after looking into ERP systems and catalogs for 3 months, I was almost suicidal. I was lucky again though. I got a call from a good friend, René. He worked at Kongsskilde Strategic Development Department. And he said, "We need someone with experience in hydraulics. Would you be interested in a job like this?" And I said, yes. I was hooked immediately. This was a small department with a lot of freedom and influence. We developed new agriculture machinery in close collaboration with the universities. We had the freedom to do whatever crazy idea we got. In the beginning, I really loved it. I even became a team leader with 15 people in my team. But then after 2 years, I started to lose faith in the work that we were doing. We didn't really finish any products, and we had huge workshops where we just struggled to get a motor running the next day. After some time, I couldn't really see the purpose of it anymore, and my boss offered me a PhD instead. Well, at this point in my life, I felt like a huge success. Just 2 years out of university, right? I had a salary of 48,000 a month, and I would get to keep that salary while writing a PhD. Perfect, right? But not for me. I was stressed out at this point. Really, really stressed out. I was stressed out about trying to take this opportunity and get started on the PhD, but I couldn't specify a real project. Today, I know the reason for this was that I need my job to contribute to something greater than myself. I need meaning with the things I do. And as this was the real world, there wasn't any professor that could tell me this lesson. I had to learn this by doing it the hard way. But it was actually going to get a lot worse than this. I was about to learn that the real world doesn't care if you're happy and fulfilled. It cares about what you can do for it, not what it can do for you. I waved goodbye to my good job at Kongsskilde and got myself an assistant lead position as a control engineer in a big company. I had an excellent team. I got some very challenging tasks that required deep insight, and I felt like I had to perform like never before. Here I knew my work would contribute, but at the same time I had some personal problems which started to affect my work as well. I'm not sure if you tried this, but suddenly it was like my brain didn't want to learn anything. My ears wouldn't listen. My mind wouldn't remember. I couldn't focus, and I was tired all the time, and I was very, very unhappy. I couldn't understand what was happening to me. After weeks, I finally went to the doctor who did a test and concluded, "You have a depression. What you're experiencing is called a burnout." And I said, "What? No, that can't be true. I'm a super engineer. You're speaking to Batman of engineering here. That's my whole identity." So I went back to the company I was working for and asked my manager for a meeting. And the meeting starts out by him looking irritated at me. "Now, what was it that you want to talk to me about?" "Well, I don't feel happy in this job as expected. I find it hard to concentrate, learn, remember, and listen. And I think it's very strange because I used to enjoy work like this, especially in a great team. I also have some personal issues that I'm struggling with." Then my manager stops me, looks me straight in my eyes and said, "I would appreciate if you could keep your private affairs at home and show some more enthusiasm at your job." I was in shock. I felt very embarrassed, and the meeting was over. I have never experienced anything as cynical as this with a human being before or since, and I promised myself that I would never do that to anyone, ever. After 10 days of pushing myself to the limit, living up to his expectations, my manager got promoted and I got fired. So there I was. I had a nice start in my career, being a team leader, doing a PhD, then working with top engineers, and then being fired. Now my life was a mess. I was both sick with depression and I was fired. And I probably smelled very bad too. My company was hired though to program and design a brand new hydraulic pitch controller, which would be used to turn the blades of the world's largest wind turbine. And it would be placed in China. Yeah. So, 2 years before this, I was fired. And now I was designing a hydraulic pitch controller from scratch for the world's largest wind turbine. And while doing so, I also took my life back. So when I stood at the top of that turbine in the beginning of my speech, looking out at China with my good friend, I knew that I finally did something that mattered to me, but also something that had an impact on others. But you know what? The interesting thing about this is that if I hadn't gone through all this entire journey, maybe I wouldn't have learned the things that I know today, and real life taught me these things. Let's face it, my old manager was a very incompetent leader. He got it totally wrong. Don't leave your private affairs at home, because then you can't bring your enthusiasm into your job. If you go out there and find yourself working for a leader like I did, that doesn't see you as a human being, but just as a resource in his team, remember this speech and trust that you're worthy of something more. Real life is starting now, and you should take care of yourself. Ultimately, I also found out something more. And the most important thing you get here is not only knowledge, it's also friends. Connections you can draw upon when real life gets tough, because maybe the friend you went out and got drunk with is the next friend that lands you a new job, or listens when there's something going hard in your life, or celebrate when things are great. You can be as clever as you can possibly be, but if you have no friends and colleagues, it's just no fun anymore. So, with that, I'm going to wish you all the best of luck in your future lives. Enjoy this moment. The future is right there for the taking. And when times are tough, because it's going to get tough, remember what a clever man once said. Everything is going to be all right at the end. And if it isn't all right, it probably isn't the end. Thank you for listening.